4 of us.
Well,
That's actually better yet. We'll get the inside scoop.
There you go.
well, I have a feeling more will be arriving as quickly as possible, and I'll try to keep up on getting them unmuted as quickly as possible as well.
There you go.
Did everybody get a chance to go vote?
I did. I got my happy little sticker on.
I do too.
Me too.
See there,
A long line for me.
all of us proud people.
Okay. So as I said, I'm unmuting everybody's microphone as they come in. It's up to you to mute yourself and then unmute as David calls on you. I'm going to just let David answer questions as he sees hands raised, and then we'll just go from there. It's free form. The recorder is on right now, and I guess I'll throw a question out there just right off the bat. David, get something started here for you.
Okay, cool.
Tell us about this new partnership that you posted on the forum yesterday.
So Applits. Yeah, that's a great it's a great way to start this. In fact, I'm going to share my screen.
Okay.
While I do this. Applits is a service, a site, a startup that is all about app ideas. And so their concept, independent of us, didn't have anything to do with us when they came up with this, is about helping people who want to see an app on their phone. It started with, hey, I wish there was an app for that. So that concept on your phone is if you're browsing for a certain kind of app and you can't find one, they thought maybe, hey, if we had a place to submit those ideas, then maybe we would vet all of those ideas through a community, and the best ideas would come to the top, and we would make them. So in essence, that's what they're doing. And so these ideas are submitted by members of their community, and if the winning idea gets enough votes, and I don't know their math behind that, then Applits makes the app. And so the concept is pretty simple. And so the reason we're excited about this partnership is not only are these great guys, I've known Keith for quite a while, the founder and lead of it. We think it fits nicely into what we're trying to do, because there's a lot of people who are exploring and trying to figure out, you know, how this whole process works, and they ultimately conclude that it isn't necessarily for them, and maybe it's a little bit too complicated for them, or maybe they don't have the time, or they just want something made. And so in that case, Applits is probably a better fit, where they can maybe submit their idea and get a feeling for or get some feedback on their idea, than say Buzztouch is, where we want them to dive in and start hacking around and making stuff. And so the same thing can also be true for people that visit Applits. A lot of the people who have an idea at Applits, they actually do want to try to make it, or they do want to explore, you know, what it might take to create their vision. And so we teamed up, kind of formally and informally at the same time. There's nothing concrete about our partnership other than the fact that we're supporting each other, and we are actually hoping to finish up some details around an agreement that sounds something like this. When the winning app is selected on applits.com, then we at Buzztouch are going to create that app, so that we can highlight, using the Buzztouch approach, so that we can highlight how our tool and our community can make some amazing stuff. And so for us, it's going to be nice to be able to kind of get back on the app making saddle a little bit with high quality ideas, and hopefully maybe every 5 or 6 weeks or so, that's kind of the goal, you're going to see an app that's made by us that was the winner of these contests, if that makes sense. So does that answer your question, Warren?
It does. Now, when you say we, do you mean we as a community, or David's going to build it and all of us get to follow along as you build the process?
I think that's the way that we're going to start, is I'm actually going to make them at the beginning to try to figure out, is this something that is conducive to, like you said, the community thing. I mean, ideally, in a perfect world and kind of a, all is good kind of a viewpoint, we'd get 10, 20, whatever of us, 15 of us, 5 of us, and as a group we'd make the app. But I'm not quite sure yet how easy that will be. It might actually be harder, especially in the beginning. So what I hope to do is make the thing and then kind of chronicle the steps that I took the tools that I use and the different types of screens that I used, and I'm certainly going to have to be, you know, whipping up some customizations and some plugins and stuff for each of these ideas. And I think it would make sense to kind of chronicle that in an organized way. I mean, I could spend weeks and weeks and weeks trying to make it, you know, super high quality presentation style content about the process, but it might be better just kind of in the raw. And I'm not sure how I'm going to do that yet, but originally I'm going to do it, or we're going to do it. I may, you know, hire some help or whatever. And then long term, it may be that people in our community do it. And I can imagine where, you know, maybe somebody that has some credibility in our community wants to take on one of them or something like that. And that could be fun too. And so a lot of opportunities there. I don't see any other hands. I'm not sure how I got the wrong little thing going. Yep, no other hands. So do we have any other questions? I'm just going to sit here and try to explain as much as we can.
Well, let me direct you to your chat window. Sherry asked a question, which is
chat. There it is.
Yeah, a good philosophical question. If you knew now what you knew when you first started Buzztouch, what would you do differently?
Oh, that is a great one. In fact, can I share my screen on GoToWebinar? I mean, my camera?
Not yet.
We can't share our camera.
Yeah, not yet.
Okay, that's a great question, Sherry, and it's funny because, you know, every time, kind of in the startup world, you know, every time you run into challenges or difficulties, or you start second guessing your approaches to things, you know, you ask yourself, wow, if I was going to start over tomorrow, what would I do? And believe it or not, sometimes you answer that with, I wish I could start over tomorrow. But of course, that's a whole other topic. So I would do two things differently. And both of these things we're actually working on as we speak. The first thing is I would try to be more clear as to what we're trying to accomplish with our site and our community. I think it's still quite a bit more confusing when you land on our site to understand than it has to be. And so what I'm working on now is a better way. I don't know what that was. But anyway, is it me that's echoing? I'm not sure.
No, I unmuted A-Train's mic, and that was what happened.
I think it's really, really important that people who land on our site have a better understanding, faster and easier, that first kind of arrival at what it is that we're trying to do. So I'm working on that message. And from the beginning, you know, I'm so full of ideas and so kind of every different direction that, you know, I wish that I had the knowledge that I have now back then, but of course I just didn't. So to answer the question with that approach is, the first thing that I would do different is I would work harder on making it easier to understand what we do than I have been. And then the second thing that I would do is I would make the software more useful to more people faster. And what I mean by that is, if there's a balance between super simple and useless, and super complex and really, really useful. On one end, on the super simple but not real useful scale, you know, lots and lots of people can take advantage of what you've done, but you lose flexibility and complexity. And in our world, that means, you know, everybody gets the same app. And a perfect example is I could make a really cool, simple, easy to use app maker that spit out applications that were nice looking and everything, but if you don't have any complexity, then they're all going to look the same. And of course, most of you who've been around a while will compare that to the old 1.4 days, right? It was easy to get a nice app. And a couple of years ago, that was kind of enough, but things have changed. And so what I'm doing now is redesigning the approach to how the tool is actually used. And you talked about, you've heard me talk about designing and developing and distributing and dedicating yourself to these app projects, the 4 Ds. From the very beginning, you should be able to do something really fast, like, for example, put, you know, a number 10 in a box and hit submit, and it'll make you a 10-screen app, and it'll write you all the code for that, and just kind of framework out that project. That can be useful for a lot of people, and you don't necessarily know why Buzztouch is good unless you commit quite a bit of time to it, and I'm trying to remove that. So the second thing that I would do is I would make it simpler while hiding all the complexities instead of showing everybody the complexities unless they want to discover them. So hopefully that answers your question, Sherry. I've got a ton of things that I would also do different, but those are the two things that come to mind. So Susan's got her hand up.
Well, when I put my hand up, I was on a different track, but now on this track we're on. I read this book called The Lean Startup, and it seems like you really have done a good job from that book's perspectives. Like that book is kind of about how you start a successful startup, and one of the key things is that you try things, and if they don't work, you move on quickly. And I've seen you change gears from the 1.4 to the 1.5, and then we kind of all of a sudden let go of 1.5 and went to the self-hosting and a different model, and then to the plugins. But I've seen you change gears, and they have something in the book called a minimum viable product, where you just get something out there to see if people are interested, minimally, and then see if it works. And if it works, you keep going with it. And if not, you quickly change something else.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
Now the question would be is, what was your thought process when you decided to drop the 1.5 and go to 2.0? And all of a sudden there was an announcement to us from our perspective, and that you're dropping 1.5 and going to 2.0. It was very exciting, but it was a very big shift.
Right.
Was there like a thought process that went behind that, or?
Yeah, that's a good question. A couple of different things were facts on our end that had been kind of building for a while. I don't want to call them problems, but they were definitely facts. So the thought process behind that was 1.5 was based on basically everything that I'd written, and old stuff in many cases, and stuff that wouldn't compile in the new Xcode versions and wouldn't work on iOS 6, and a lot of this stuff in 1.5 just wasn't going to be very usable moving forward. And since we kind of knew that for a while, we had to kind of try to solve that problem. And so the other challenge that we had was, at some point last year we recognized that we can't keep making all of the screens, and we can't keep telling people and preaching to people that, hey, if you use this tool, you can do anything you want. Because the fact is you can't, right? You're never going to have a standard generic app, quote unquote, app builder that allows you to do anything. There's always going to be some kind of customization around your project. And so we're all about helping people make amazing things. We're not about helping people make lame things. And so if you're going to help people make amazing things, we needed to figure out a new approach. And so the plugin market was part of that. So really what this is shaping up into is, if you ask yourself, okay, I have a 12-screen app, and you understand that the first step of designing an app is literally like trying to figure out how many screens am I going to have. And if it's 12 screens, I think we all understand that some of those screens are going to be well suited for some of these existing plugins, but a lot of the other screens aren't. And you're going to need to create those on your own, or pay somebody to make you a screen, or whatever. And so, maybe come to the community for some help if you're interested in doing it yourself. But the point there is there's going to be some part of your app that you need to customize to a certain degree. And so we're trying to put a community together that supports the idea that, remember the original mission, that still hasn't changed. I want everybody who thinks I want to make an app come to our site and use our site. That could be a developer, a professional, that could be somebody who's brand new, all that kind of stuff. And so it has to appeal to that broad audience. And today, if you're a professional developer, you probably don't want to use Buzztouch to make your project, not because it's not a great tool, but because you don't believe that it's the right approach. So by simplifying the interface, which is what we're working on now, and taking away a lot of that complexity, while still not taking it away technically, taking it away visually, you're going to be able to appeal to people who are just starting out making these things. But also you're going to be able to maintain that idea that if the guy across the street hires me as a professional to make an app and it's 13 screens, going through Xcode or Eclipse and making all of those files manually and assembling the basis for that project as a professional, it takes a long time. It would be great if I could hit a button and put a number 10 in there and hit a button and have it spit out 10 view controllers with 10 nib files and assemble it all for me so I can go to work. That's useful to a professional. So we're trying to constantly balance those kinds of things. So I'm going to move over to A-Train. A-Train's got a question. He's got a little bit of a time constraint. So let's go there. Tim, what's up?
Hey, Tim, are you with us? Well, I know Tim had a meeting today, so he had a little bit of a
Okay.
time constraint. But he sent me and to you as well an email with a list of questions that he was interested in. So so let me go ahead and just rattle through these here, and
Sure.
maybe we can pick some of these up.
Yep.
His first is more of a request than a question. Can we get another 90-minute lesson on extending the API into the control panel?
Yeah, that wasn't enough time last week. I totally agree. Absolutely.
Okay.
Anytime.
He said he'd love to see more on how to build a menu list or work with JSON data that I obtained from elsewhere and use it in a data URL.
Yeah, I've been seeing some of that on the forum too, and we could spend 90 minutes. In fact, let's just do that. Let's spend 90 minutes and title it JSON to app, make the connection or something like that.
Okay. We'll get that on the schedule then. His second question was, can you show us some good examples of using an app delegate?
That's a great question. That could go a little long, but let's see if we can explain it a little bit. And this is going to get a little technical, but bear with me because it's a really, really important topic. So the first thing, and we'll talk a little bit, then I'll show you. So the first thing about that word that always makes me laugh is it's just complicated. What the heck is a delegate? And so depending on your background and what kind of industry you come from, you may never even have heard that word before at all until you started making iOS apps. It's very iOS centric, the word delegate. But other people might understand right away that delegates could mean all kinds of things, right? So in the world of code, I like to consider a delegate as a worker or a reporter or a little agent that I send out to bring me back information. And so an example of that might be, let's say I take an employee in the office and I say, hey, go get me a Subway sandwich. Well, it makes perfect sense to him. So he's my sandwich delegate, and he runs off and gets me a sandwich, and sure enough, 5 minutes or 15 minutes later, he comes back and gets this and brings me the sandwich. So in the simplest way to explain it, a delegate is a worker that can do things and then report to you on certain events. I could have said, hey, go get me a sandwich, and when you get to Subway, let me know. And then let me know when you leave Subway. So in programming, that might be, hey, go download this file and let me know when you're halfway done, or 3/4 of the way done, or all the way done. So it becomes really, really useful to know in your app when certain things are happening. And a lot of people consider that like background workers. It's kind of the same idea, but different. So let's look at one of the plugins that uses a delegate, and I'll show you what I'm talking about, because lots of them use our little downloader delegate. So if we go to, first I'm going to go to core, and I'm going to look at the Buzztouch downloader class, which is a file. And if we look at the .h file of this, you'll see where it's got an additional protocol at the top of the .h file. And this is the protocol that defines 3 optional methods. One's called download file started, download file in progress, and then download file completed. What we're saying to the compiler and anyone who knows how to read Objective-C is we're saying, hey, when this Buzztouch downloader is operating and doing work, it's gonna report these 3 things. And if you want in your code that uses this file, you can listen for these events or subscribe to them. So the downloader, most of us will understand what it does, right? It just downloads stuff. But how do we take advantage of that is kind of what Tim's asking. So let's look at a file that uses the downloader. Like I said, lots of them do. We'll go to, let's go to one that's not very complicated. How about the PDF doc? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the .h. And we're going to walk through this real fast because there's an important piece in here that people don't recognize, so, or that people get confused by. So after we've declared the name of our class and the name of the parent class, we can put at the end of that a list of, let me change this, all of the different delegates that we want to work with. And so it's different terminology. You could say that the delegates we want to subscribe to, or the delegates we want to listen to. Really what we're telling iOS is we're going to follow the rules as set out in each one of these delegates. So the rules about the download file delegate, we looked at, the downloader told us, hey, that optionally, we can implement a method called download file started, download file in progress, and download file completed. We don't have to because it's optionally. If we say we're going to follow the rules in iOS's built-in UI WebView delegate, well then optionally, some of them are optional and some of them are not optional. Let's go to the documents real quick, and I'll show you the reference here. We can say, hey, we want to implement a method called did fail load with error, or should start loading with request, or did finish loading, or did start loading. So these are the methods that this delegate will report to us if we implement those in our code. So in our .m, okay, so in our .h, we're telling the compiler which delegate methods we may or may not be implementing. And then in our .m, I'll show you how we implement those. So right here, because we told iOS that our web view on this screen, which is right here, you see where we said this class is web view, its delegate equals self. So self is itself, this class. We're telling the code, hey, this web view expects to find delegate methods somewhere in the class file. So let's find those. And I usually write a note like web view delegate methods or something like that. So let's look. They're going to be way down here. Okay, so there's a little line. So this should start loading with request method will get triggered or fired, should start loading with request method by iOS automatically because we subscribe to that delegate protocol in our .h right there. So we subscribe to the delegate protocol for that kind of thing, which means this method is going to fire. And the names of the methods usually tell you what they're going to do, and then we can act accordingly. So we're going to know when it's about to load. We're going to know when it started loading. You can see here I'm showing the progress indicator as soon as it started loading. We're going to know when it finished loading, right? So we can subscribe to these things. We're going to know when it failed loading, and we can act accordingly. So the same thing can be said for action sheet delegate methods. An action sheet is that little thing that slides up that usually has buttons on it like yes, no, maybe. We subscribe to the action sheet delegate method. User interface action sheet delegate. We could go to the documents and we could see that the action sheet will tell us when somebody clicks a button. And then we can figure out which button was clicked. So we subscribe to those delegate methods. Here are our downloader delegate methods from our custom downloader class. So we want to say, hey, when the file starts downloading, let us know. When it's in progress, keep us posted as to how much progress you've made. We can say download file completed. Let us know when it's complete. So delegates are really, really powerful. So let's sum that up. We said the delegates are like workers. In this case, our WebView delegate's a worker. Our action sheet delegate's a worker, just listening for action, for button taps on the action sheet. And our download file delegate's a worker. And we can interact with those workers when they report to us the methods that they tell us that they're going to report. So hopefully that didn't lose everybody. That was about a 12-minute discussion on delegates. And delegates are incredibly powerful and important in iOS and, well, in every programming language. But it really becomes an issue of imagine you being in charge of 40 people in your office, 40 delegates or employees, and you sent them all out to do tasks. And individually, you needed to know when they were done with those tasks. So you would listen to them, and you would probably use a mobile phone, and you would say, hey, call me. So they would call you when they're done with their task, and then you would do something accordingly. Does that make sense?
Hello?
Hello?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Oh, okay. That's that. Yeah, that's excellent. Excellent example. I think I sent Lauren like about 3 or 4 more questions too. I don't know if you want to go through those or let somebody else.
Well, we can as long as nobody's hands go up. Let's go through them. I mean, everybody's going to benefit by most of these.
I mean, that could take a 90-minute session myself.
I feel like a therapist.
Well,
So much good stuff to learn. I mean, that's the thing is watching all these videos that you've put out lately. I mean, you can't just watch them in an hour.
No.
You watch it, then you absorb it, over a couple of days, then you spend a couple of days actually practicing and playing with some of the methods in there.
Yeah,
So,
totally. In fact, I totally know what you're saying.
Catch up on some of the early lessons.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. Just keep going. Don't stop.
So what's the next one on your list?
Let me see if I can find.
Warren's got the list.
Yeah, I've got the list in front of me. And the next question was, can you discuss Google OAuth? Or is that Google OAuth? Google OAuth, and perhaps show a simple example of using it in an app.
You're talking about OAuth? Like authentication? I'm not going to be able to show you an example because it'd take us too long, but if you go to Google OAuth, let's talk about what it is really.
I mean, you don't have to go through a whole example, but yeah, just kind of talk about it and show us how we could use it maybe.
Sure. Let's get the audience to understand this, or at least all of us to understand this a little bit. So if I go to a website, let's go to a website. Let's go to, I don't know, clout.com. Clout.com. This is a perfect example. You see where they say sign in with Facebook or sign in with Twitter? We've all seen this. One way to explain this is they're using a technology like OAuth, and this is one approach, but they're all in essence similar. And we're saying to Cloud that, hey, you can communicate with my Facebook account, or you can communicate with my Twitter account. And we're all used to that on our phones too, right? You can go to your settings and you can say, you know, let Facebook communicate with my contacts, for example. So the difference between that and, say, just logging in with Clout is significant. And the biggest reason it's significant is that you can revoke that privilege that you gave Clout. So today I might want to connect with Facebook, but later on I might want to say, you know what, Clout? You can't connect with my Facebook account anymore. Our relationship is over, and I'm not interested in letting you do that. And so with OAuth, you as the owner of your credentials, in essence, your personal information, sometimes that's something as simple as a login and a password, but other times it's something complex like a whole Facebook account. Your login credentials are in your control and not in the control of the website. I'll give you another perfect example. If you go to buzztouch.com and you log in, we don't use OAuth, by the way. If you go to buzztouch.com and you log in, you're giving me your user ID and password, your email and your password. Now, presumably the only reason you gave me that is because you trust me. And hopefully you continue to trust me over time, but there may be a time when maybe you stop trusting me. Well, how do you remove your email and your password from my infrastructure? Well, you have to trust me again. Right? You tell me remove it. You click the cancel account, you send me bad emails or whatever you do, but fundamentally it's up to me to honor that request or not. So OAuth turns that on its head and it gives the power to the person who owns the information and not the person who's using the information. Does that help you understand a little bit, everybody? I'm sure most of us can kind of get our head around that. So Tim's question is a technical question, and how do you actually implement OAuth or you know, other types of information or other types of kind of security and permission and privacy protocols? And there's just really no way to explain that all in once, Tim. It's kind of hard to do that, but maybe you can give an example as to how what you're thinking about.
Well, I have like a pretty much a working plugin to like talk to the Google Calendar through that.
Okay.
So if your Google, let's say your Google Calendar account is, you know, you have to log into the Google account in order to see the calendar.
Right.
But you can offer the access. You can add a redirect URI to the calendar, and it has a kind of a magic cookie in there that you can get out of the Google account.
Got
and
it.
If you feed those values into the Google API console, you can use the OAuth to view a secured Google Calendar.
Yep, perfect. So another way to say that is you're working with OAuth tokens.
Right,
so
exactly.
Yeah, so the way that this works is when we go to that Clout site, let me go back to Clout. When we go to that Clout site, when I click this button, I'm telling Clout, hey, I'm going to give you a token, and that token itself recognizes me as David Book and what my Facebook credentials are. But because I'm giving you the token and not my actual credentials, I can revoke that token. So in your case, what you're talking about, I think, is having grabbing a token from the Google OAuth backend, saving it on the device, so that when I look at my calendar screen in my app, then the device remembers that token, and it basically tells Google, yeah, go get the calendar content for this guy. And at any time, I could go to, even without your app, outside of your app, I could go to my Google account, and I could see who's using what tokens, and I could remove them. So, yeah, so that's tremendously powerful. It can be. It can also get overwhelming because there's a few different approaches now. I'm a little bit embarrassed about the internet's kind of willingness to let Twitter and Facebook take over or that kind of stuff. Like, how come this doesn't have anything else on here, right? I mean, it's a little frustrating because Google's OAuth implementation is very open and kind of geared towards, people want to do it themselves, but the world is leaning towards the giant providers like Facebook and Twitter, which is kind of a bummer. But yeah, great questions. We might have a whole OAuth webinar too. I don't know if how many people will be interested in it, but we could totally do that. Yeah. Well, what's next on that list, Warren?
Okay, next one.
Let's see. I think the next one I had on there was the upgrading the self-hosted panels.
Upgrading?
Well, when you come out with these fixes and patches and everything on the self-hosted panels, I mean, when you have live apps out there that people are using, the last thing you want to do is go in and upgrade your server, without backing anything up, or you just want to make sure that it's not going to destroy any of this live, working stuff that's out there. So,
yeah, totally.
I mean, before I upgrade anything, I usually always duplicate it or clone a drive or something. So if the upgrade doesn't go well, I can go back and try again. But it's kind of difficult to do that, or I'd be talking about backing up my entire website and then replacing it or something.
Yeah, you could just install it in a different location. I mean, if you're concerned about that, there's nothing wrong with being concerned about that. Let's back up a little bit. All you're doing when you upgrade is you're replacing all the files in the project that have changed. So we've not, like, one way to do this, if you knew that all we did was change, this file right here, then in theory you could just change that one file. But it's hard to communicate it that way, so we usually say, new version. So what you could do is you could just copy the new version in its entirety, put it in a new location on your web server, maybe Buzztouch Server 1, Buzztouch Server 2, connect it to an existing database, the same database you're using for the other version, and just visit that URL instead of the first URL, and then you could tinker with it. That's one idea. Now, the one thing that you'll run into that's a little bit problematic is the files folder, which creates all these folders dynamically. If you put it in another location, you would probably have to copy all those from your existing install to the new install. Because notice how files is empty when you get it, there's nothing in it. So
when you distribute a new package of the server, are you basically is it kind of like setting up a brand new server? Or are you saying you can just lay this on top of your old existing server? I guess. Yeah,
let's change the word server to website to make it easier to understand. All this is a package of web files that collectively together make an application. Now we used to call it Buzztouch Server. That term, we're trying to kind of lose that term because we found that it confuses people. All this is an installation similar to like a WordPress or something like that. So you can copy this and just upload a whole nother version onto the same machine in a different directory, and therefore have two control panels running.
You can use the same API key for both panels then? No.
Yeah, but we're to this point we've been using the same API key per machine. We don't expect people to run 50 installs or whatever, and really the only reason we do that is so that we don't get the guy out there who has Buzztouch Server /Joe, Buzztouch Server /Tom, Buzztouch Server /Bill, and 500 customers of his, and he's getting rich off us. That's the reason we try to monitor that stuff.
Gotcha.
But so far it hasn't been a problem.
A new package or some new updates, then it's just as a self-hosted person, how do you approach them, the updates, or what would be your method then?
I replace the way that I do it is I replace everything. I just upload everything except for the CK editor folder because it takes so long to upload. I upload everything, and I just don't re-upload that.
Okay. And the files are where the app data is at, correct?
Exactly.
And those never get overwritten on any kind of updates or anything?
Right, unless you do it yourself.
Okay.
So you don't want to do that.
Right. Okay. Sounds good.
It sounds like before we go to maybe one of yours on your list, let's jump over to Susan again.
Oh yeah, I kind of have a follow-up question, but one thing I did when I was playing with trying to make plugins is I broke some of the things on my server. I don't think I'd do it again, but it kind of came to me that there maybe should be two servers. One server for creating plugins and for testing, and a different server that they keep live for your customers.
That's a great idea. That's kind of sort of what Tim was just talking about. Yep.
So you would just okay, yeah, okay. So now, but would it be just trying to think through how that would work? So maybe I would put the next time there's a release, I would actually create the second server with the new one. Could I just drag over all my plugins and drag over all my projects into the new one whenever it was ready?
Yeah, as long as the permissions are good. Well, you could, but what's going to end up happening is, what it boils down to is the database, right? Are you connecting it to the same database or not?
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Because if you're connecting it to the same database, like look at this real quick. If I go to this install, which is kind of just like you just said, it's kind of a little testing environment to install, I mean, to kind of play with, then you'll see the URL up here, right? Buzztouch server. And if I go to the admin settings panel, you'll see the database here that we're connected to. And so it will show you that this is the name of the database, this is the name of the host. So if you connect your additional, Buzztouch server 2, Buzztouch server 3, or whatever folders you make, if you connect it to the same database, you're going to get the same data, which is good. But like you said, you also need to move those files over there, because when you're working on an application, like this My First App, there's a directory for this app. And if it doesn't exist, it'll get created. And so it depends on what you're trying to test. If you want to do something totally separate, then I would set up a second database and just run my tests in this environment. I wouldn't try to do it in both panels. I don't see any other hands.
I was going to say, I think one thing that would make sense is to have one that you give to clients that you were very careful with, and then one that you felt like you could try new things on.
Yeah, totally. So one of the things that we bump up against is, of course, since this is open source and we're giving you all of this code, really what we're doing is asking for work, right? I mean, if it was all locked up and you couldn't see it, you couldn't change it, and you couldn't have it, remember, it doesn't cost anything to have this stuff, well, then we'd have a whole lot less work to do in some regards, because nobody would be breaking it, and it would only do X, Y, Z. But we decided that we'd be better off by giving it away and encourage everyone to explore and to break. And just don't be bashful, Susan. You can't hurt anything permanently, right? Back up your data, hack around, make new versions, make new copies. If it doesn't go well, you just do it again. Don't be bashful. Don't be nervous about breaking stuff. That's part of discovery.
No, that's true.
Just remember you said that, David, at 4 o'clock on a Saturday morning when Susan's calling you.
I would love it if Susan called me at 4 o'clock in the morning with a giant smoke signal up, like, help, I've got customers.
Yeah, if we have clients, it'd be very, very serious. But that's what happened. Well, Sherry, all she did was try to reinstall because she was trying to do a demo, and she really knows what she's doing with web things, and then she broke it. So, and it was not easy to fix either.
Yeah, and without Sherry's definitely
But
she's got super legit skills. But on the other hand, that's all relative. If I look at the server settings for this, and if I remember Sherry's situation, you see these directories. If you're not really sure about the paths on your server and how your web server is configured on the back end, it's pretty easy to break stuff. If you just move things around, all of a sudden it's broke. You're totally right, Susan. You're totally right. See, I got a new theme on this one, but the theme's still black, but I've called it blue. So I'm just experimenting.
David,
any other stuff?
We got another question here from A-Train for you.
Okay.
It says, can you talk about third-party SDKs and how they should be packaged and supported properly within a plugin?
I think we had this a few weeks ago too, a month ago. Tim's like, yeah, he's all about how am I going to do this, which is cool. So basically, when you add a third-party SDK to an iOS project, I assume we're talking about iOS, you're
Right.
just in essence dragging it into the project, right? So if you weren't using Buzztouch and you wanted to add something to your project, you just drag it in. So the problem with a lot of those SDKs are, well, there's two problems. Some of them are open and they give you tons and tons of files to explore and to confuse things, and then some of them are closed and they just give you a little packaged binary that you add to your app. In the case of the one that just gives you a little packaged binary, you would just include it, like here's David's Paint plugin. See how his Paint plugin has about 10 files? You could include that SDK binary right in your plugin folder. And so in your plugin package, what you would have, let me see if I have, where would I go here? In your plugin package, files, plugins, yeah, so you have your iOS and your Android folders. You would include your binary right in your iOS folder. Everything that you put in the iOS folder will end up in the iOS project when you download your code, and then everything in your Android folder will end up in your Android project. Android's a little bit more complicated because it can't all go in the same place, right? For those who've worked with Android, you recognize that images have to be in drawables, and XML layout files have to be in the resources folder, and you can't just keep them all in the same thing, which is a little lame, but it's just the way it is. So in your case, your folder would have a name, and you'd have your .h and your .m and whatever other supporting files you need, and your binary SDK thing would be included in that list. So the thing that starts to add troubles to us is we don't want subfolders inside of this folder. So if you've got 9 folders in here to support your plugin, we're going to end up with a little bit of a problem. So you want to make sure all your folders are in the same parent directory. So like if you look at, didn't we have one of these with like tons and tons of files? I think it was photo effects, maybe. See if I can find it. Paint.
Any menus too. Those have a lot of
You had like dozens and dozens of files, and they just have to be in the same directory. That's all. Yeah, maybe I don't have it installed on this server. I mean, in this project.
I guess kind of my question with it though is that when you pull down one of these SDKs from like say Avery or Parse or something, I mean it's specifically designed to work like in a specific environment, under a certain build settings,
yep,
certain tags and everything. I mean there's a lot of little technical things that go in there. So once you get that built, let's say for a project and it's working and everything, then what happens when the new version of iOS comes out? And they require a different SDK for that plugin.
Yeah, you're totally right. And so there's no question that's
going to make that plugin useless then for somebody on a newer version, but yet it could be a good plugin for somebody working in another specific version. So I mean, it's kind of like it takes the whole idea of a generic template that you can feed any SDK into, and it to just work because you don't know what the end environment is going to be.
Yeah, you're totally right. And since we're talking about literally thousands of quote-unquote SDKs.
Yeah, there's so many great ones out there, but you can get them to work, but it takes a lot of, tweaking to make it work exactly the way you want in your app.
Yeah.
It's not going to work the same way in the next person's app.
Yeah, and let's not lose sight of the fact that SDK acronym, Software Developer Kit. I mean,
right.
By nature of what it is, it's a complex idea, and so you may find that trying to make something simple by way of creating a plugin turns out to make it far more complex and just a bad idea. You may discover that that's not reasonable to do with any kind of success, and you might find.
I don't see it, but I see a lot of posts now, like out on the forum. Notably there was that Erasmo, I guess. That's called that Reality 3K or whatever, that augmented reality. I mean, in order to use that in your app, you've got to apply to them and beg for them to send you the kernel or something like that.
Right, exactly.
Get it, stuff it in your app. And it's like, okay, great, but I mean that's going to work specifically perfect for my project. But the idea of making a plugin for that to work in everybody else's project. I mean, each person has to go in and sign up for their own account,
Yeah.
get approval technically, or are we going to be able to like take that kernel that they gave us and repackage it? I mean, it's just kind of a confusing area that I'm just trying to figure out.
Totally. And I think you've probably nailed it with the fact that you're exactly right, and that some of those things are far more complex than they're not real conducive to repurposing easily and quickly, and you're totally right. So we're running out of time here. I'm going to go to Warren and Sherry. Were asking about soundboards and sound buttons. How do you apply sounds to things?
David, let me jump in here and
Yep.
remind you, because you may not have been aware of this, today's session is 90 minutes instead of 60.
Oh, perfect.
And so
cool.
With that, we'll move on to Sherry's question, and you're halfway through your 90 minutes.
Yeah, thanks for that. You're amazing. I would have ran out on you guys and got a hamburger. Okay, so sounds. Let's talk about sounds. There's some tricks with sounds in both iOS and Android, but since these things are so focused on iOS, it seems, we'll stick with iOS, and I've got it open right now. So Sherry was asking about quite a while ago about a soundboard app and how to do that. And of course, there's 1,000 ways to do it, but how can we leverage the button menu right now so that when I tap a button, let's find a button menu, I get a sound. And we did some basic things. So if we look at the button view and we look at the buttons that we add to this screen, and one of these is probably called, it's been a long time, one of these is probably called, tap button. Let's find one of those methods, button click, button tap, something like that. Knowing me, where would it be? Menu item tap. Okay, so when you tap a button on the button screen, all of this happens. Okay, so let's walk through this to try to bring this to the sound effect discussion. So the first thing that we're going to do is figure out which button was tapped. Then we're going to fade that button, okay? And we're going to fade it in and out. And there's just a little method called fade view, which is somewhere else in the code. That's not what this is about. We're about sounds. And then we're going to launch another screen. But nowhere in here, in this button tap event, nowhere in here does it say, play sound effect, or, start stereo, or make the guitar sound, or something like that. It doesn't make any sense. So we just trigger another selector called launch screen. And we're passing into this method the button. This should probably be called this button item. It's called this menu item, but either way. So let's look at launch screen and go to that method. And by the way, the reason that we're doing that is instead of loading the screen right here is we're delaying this 0.2 of a second so that you can get the full effect of the fade view animation. In other words, when that animation's done, we're going to do this. So let's go to launch screen. So the launch screen method right here, it's pretty short. It takes, look at that, what do you know is right under it. So there's where we trigger this method, and it takes one argument, which is a Buzztouch item, and it's the button we tapped. So we get a reference to the project's delegate. We go to the application and we say, hey, get me all of the data for this screen ID. See here, get screen data by item ID. So this now is going to equal the JSON data. This Buzztouch item is going to equal the JSON data for one of these things. So that might look like this. So Buzztouch item with the name screen object to load looks like this. So we're passing in that JSON here, and we're passing in the menu items JSON, which might look like, let's find a menu item. Oh, that's a menu item. I copied a menu item, not a screen. So let's get a screen. Okay, so this is what a screen might look like. And this is what a menu item might look like. So this JSON here, which is a menu item, we're passing this into this method right here. It may or may not have something like this in it. If it does have a sound effect file name, you'll see where we're going to use that. It may or may not. But let's say it does. So in our view control manager, our Buzztouch view control manager, there's a method called handle tap to load screen. And we send that thing 3 different objects. We send it the JSON data for this parent screen. We send it the JSON data for the thing that was tapped. And then we send it the JSON data for the thing that we're about to load, in this case, another screen. So let's go have a look at that method. Handle tap to load screen, which is in our Buzztouch view controller. So that's in layout, I think. Buzztouch view controller, handle tap to load screen. Right here. This is a pretty long method, but I'm just going to scroll down to you and show you where the sound effects come in. So the sound effects, if the menu item includes a sound effect, cool. Go to the app's delegate, the root of the app, and run a method called play sound effect. Pretty simple. So that's where it's being triggered. So hey app delegate, go play a sound effect with this name. So if we go to the app delegate and we look at play sound effect, let's find it. Play sound effect. You'll see here that it loops through and it tries to find a sound effect with the name of that file. Well, that makes sense. But where the heck are the sound effects? It's a common question. And this is the part that I want kind of everybody to try to get their head around. Load sound effects is a method that's commented out right now on purpose in all of your projects because these sound effects do not come with your projects. So if you add these sound effects to your project, drag them in, any sound effects, just something with an MP3 extension, uncomment this, then when your app loads, it will load all of these sound effects in the background and they'll be quote-unquote prepared to play. And the reason we need to do that when the app loads is because it takes a little bit of time to load all these sound effects. And one things you don't want to do is try to tell iOS to play a sound file that hasn't loaded yet because it'll be a weird, ugly delay. So we load the sound effects when your app launches, right? Let me find it. So your app launches, it goes down there and it says, hey, are there any sound effects? If there are, let's load them up. I think we do that in a different thread. Yep. Load sound effects right here. So hopefully that'll help a little bit. I know it's technical, but the bottom line is your apps delegate has a list of sounds that you may or may not be using, and you can use them if you want, and they'll work great, but you got to provide the MP3s. I think all these were originally like back in the day on maybe 1.5 or 1.4 or something, and I probably got a letter from Apple or something that said, hey, those are our sounds. So I stopped using them. I can't remember what it was, but you could totally do it. So hopefully that helps with sounds. Oh, just another tip. If you're going to build a plugin that uses sounds, you probably want to write a method like this in your class file that does something like loads them all up in advance so that they're prepared to play. Because if you try to play a sound with what we call lazy loading, you know, as soon as you tap a button, you want to load up and play a sound, it's just as lame. It's not going to work right. So Warren's got another one on here from Miguel. How do in-app purchases work? Do you block part of the app that goes with the binary you update to Apple, or is it a different binary that downloads when you make the in-app purchase? Okay, so that's a good question. I'm not quite sure. Is Miguel's mic on? Can you hear me, Miguel?
Yes, I can hear you. Hello.
Yeah, you're
Can you hear me?
You're a pretty intelligent guy. It's usually easier to just kind of listen. So maybe rephrase this question. I'm not quite sure what you're saying.
What I mean is, when let's say that I have an app that's like a Lite version, and then you have the in-app purchase option to buy the whole thing. What I'm asking is the whole of the app, is the complete version already in the app when I upload the Lite version, or is it like something that it will load a second app like a second complete app?
Yep. Good question. So you've got a couple of different questions there, and I think maybe the challenge you're having is the way that you're looking at this. And so there are two ways really for Apple to help you take money. One way is by doing what you're referring to, in-app purchases, and another way is having them sell applications for you. Completely different things. So when you use terminology like a Lite version, generally from a technical perspective, you can't sell in your app another app. Apple won't allow that. So what you're talking about is not in-app purchases. What you're talking about is having two apps in the store, one that's free and one that costs money. So, but another way to do this is to take advantage of in-app purchases, which allows you to sell additional features. And it's probably a more popular approach these days because in essence, the Lite version of your paid version is probably the same app with just additional things or additional content. So in that case, you only have one app. You build all the content in there. You don't show it to anyone who hasn't paid. And when they pay, your project is responsible for, quote unquote, turning on that feature that's already in the app. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does make sense, yeah.
So, in fact, if you look at the plugin for the in-app purchase, you can see how easy this is. Really what you're doing is you're going to Apple and you're saying, get product info. So when a screen loads that, let's say, is protected content, every one of your protected content screens is actually a product. So you would go to the Apple control panel and you would create product IDs, a product ID for each screen that you wanted to protect. And when the screen loaded, your project here would call Apple, literally call Apple and say, hey, Apple, has this person bought this screen yet? And if they have, well, then it goes to the screen. If they have not, then it prompts them to pay for it.
Yeah, okay, so but that works screen by screen. I mean, let's imagine that I have an app about the USA, you know, with all the states.
Yep.
And I want it to be out free, and you only have access to like New York State.
Perfect.
And then I want to have the option for you to buy the complete version. I mean, I don't know what you call it. And you automatically have access to all the other states. You know, just
perfect. So what I would do is I would make a menu to all of the other states, and the thing that you're protecting is the menu.
Okay.
And if they don't pay for that content, they never get the menu.
Okay, so we block everything in the first screen, then we'll block everything else afterwards.
Yeah, so let's say you have 6 menus. Every one of them costs 99 cents, and one menu is all about the United States, and one menu is all about Canada, and so on and so forth. Those menus, of course, would lead to other deeper, rich content.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I get it.
So you're only protecting the way in.
Yeah, I get it. And you were saying that Apple doesn't allow you to sell an app inside.
Oh no.
I mean,
no. No. In fact, I'll make you guys laugh. Long before I met any of you, some of you have heard this before from me. I'm not sure. That was one of the original concepts of Buzztouch's early beginning. Go to our control panel, build an app, quote unquote, build an app, and it would magically appear inside of the Buzztouch app. Which was in the App Store. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you paid us, we thought this was our original business plan. If you paid us, you know, maybe we would showcase your app or something like that. We were basically GetJar in the phone.
Yeah.
No, and Apple let that last about a month.
Yeah. No, but when I mean you have a Lite version and you buy a complete version, I mean you buy it via Apple Store, you know? It's just
yeah, you can you could give them a link to it. You can take a button to it.
Okay.
But you won't be able to sell them and then remove the other one. You'll have 2.
Yeah, okay, I get it. Yeah, I got it. Yeah. Okay. I understood it now, yes.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Okay, cool. So the next one looks like dun dun dun. Derval. Derval's like legit here. So let's see what Derval's up to. My question is about quizzes. Can you talk about how a user can share quiz results, for example, via their Facebook account? The quiz plugin refers to preparing the back end to receive the results. Can you explain? Totally. Totally. I think we have in some older code here some sample receive quiz results stuff, but we've got a little bit of time here. I'll try to back up. First, I'm going to let me go to my control panel, see if I have a quiz here. Application list, screens and actions. Do I have any quizzes here? No, let's add a quiz real fast. And Derval, I'm assuming you can hear me. Add a quiz. How do we get this data from the phone to somewhere else? So we'll add a quiz here. We'll go to the quiz, and we'll look at this advanced property called send quiz results to URL. Blah, 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 blah. So let's leave that sit there for a second, and let's go back and talk about PHP real quick. And let's go to our Buzztouch server install on this machine. We'll go to the API. We talked about this a little bit, and we're going app here. Okay, so what I've done, I know that was fast, but I'm just opening up a file as an example to show us all how this works. So I went to Buzztouch server, API, app, index. And now this could be on any machine. It doesn't have to be to this machine. This could be to any web server. This is one approach to do this. But basically what we're going to do, I just opened up a file. So let's just ignore all this for now. Basically what we want to do is grab results from quiz and do something. So in this case, send to Facebook, send to Twitter, etc., etc. So rather than having your phone try to send that stuff to Twitter, which introduces all kinds of new complexities, it's usually best to send them to yourself, to your own web server, do some processing, grab results, send to Twitter, and then maybe save to a database or something. It's usually better to do this on your end, and I say that because interacting with Twitter and Facebook and all that stuff from a website is generally much easier than from a phone. So we'll start with that process. So let's say that our website is mydomain.com/quizresults.php. So this is a website, and it's got a file, and let's say that we made this file. Right, this script would be called quizresults.php, and its whole purpose in life would be to receive, it would be to receive the results from the quiz so that we can do something about them. So, well, I erased that, but you get the idea. Let me do this. I wanted to show you something here. I pasted that, and we wanted the quiz results. I think we had it like this, right? mysite.com/quizresults. Okay, that's where we were. So I copied this buzztouch.com URL to give you an example of what we're doing here. So I'm going to remove the first part of this because it's not important. I'm just going to go to scoreboard.php, and then after that you'll see a bunch of parameters, a bunch of arguments separated by ampersands and question marks. So let's pull those out of here and talk about what those are doing. We need to get the results from the phone. So what the phone is going to do is it's going to append, or excuse me, replace, let me find this here, all these values. I'm separating these at the ampersand so that we can do stuff with it and we can learn stuff about it. And it shows you in the plugin screen which of these are available to you. So total points, total seconds, number of questions, number correct, number incorrect. So we want to add these fields to the end of our URL on our quiz results because we need the phone to pass these results to our back end. So let's say we wanted to know what device it was. Well, then we would put device ID. The first one's a question mark, then the rest of them are ampersands. So device ID, device model, device latitude, all these options. And let's put number correct. So we put number correct as the key, and then we put equals with the square brace, number correct. So the phone will send this value to our script here, and we'll be waiting for it. So we're going to take in number correct. These are just notes. It's all commented out. So if we wanted to get the number correct, which is going to show up, you know, these values will be in, this is called the query string, the URL. Okay, so now we're down to some, these are all comments. So let's do maybe an integer, or I'm sorry, let's do a variable called number correct. I was an integer, I was thinking of a different language there. It's funny how many languages are in my head. Equals, we want to get this from the query string, so get number correct. Okay? No big deal. So we're going to get this value get from the URL that we are telling the phone to download from. Whoops, wrong project. So get the number correct, and of course we might have, you know, other ones too, like number of questions. Number of questions is going to come from the URL. Device ID is going to come from the URL. Device latitude, device longitude, whatever values we passed in the URL. On and on and on. So we'll just do number of questions and number correct. Now, what if there's an error, though? We probably don't want to trust that value. It could be something else. So let's make sure that that's a number. So if not is numeric, then we'll probably want to do something like this, number correct. If number correct is not a number, then we probably want to make it 0 or something like that. These are just little safety things that you would probably do on certain kinds of values you would expect. If number of questions is not a value, you'd probably do 0. So at this point, you could do all kinds of things. Save them to your database, connect to an API like Facebook or Twitter and post them, right? You could build a little message, like maybe message equals exciting news. John, because we appended maybe first name, John got number correct, questions right out of whatever, number of questions. You get the idea here. Number of questions on the exciting quiz, on the fun quiz. There's your message. Then you would probably send this message with somebody's credentials to Facebook and Twitter. And you can Google, you know, how to post to Twitter from my PHP script or whatever. There's thousands of examples about that. But fundamentally, all we're doing is telling the phone to send the results to a URL here. Since we control the URL, we can do anything we want with it. We can get all the values out of the URL, and then we can do stuff with them. That's how you get them. Number correct equals get number correct. That's if it's in the query string. If it was a form variable, you could do this. You'll see all kinds of stuff. There's all kinds of helper methods and all kinds of things in the back-end software that we give you, but this is the simplest way to explain it because it'll align with a lot of things you see online, or a lot of tutorials, PHP tutorials and stuff. But there's all kinds of helper methods. Like, I'll give you an example. Let's say we didn't want to worry about whether the values were in the query string or whether they were posted or whether they were in a form. You could use a method that we call getResult. Or am I using it? Let me find it here. Let me find it. Oh, I'm getting off track. I'm just going to try to show you that in our utilities class, in the plugin, in the Buzztouch self-hosted package. There's all kinds of files that'll save you. Instead of doing this, you could just do something like number correct equals function get value number correct, and it'll clean it all up and fix it up for you if you want to take advantage of some of those functions. But for now, this is the raw way to do it. So hopefully that helps. I know it's technical, but that's kind of the point, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So,
thanks, David. Thank you.
I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, you sound great.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for that, David. So, obviously, the first thing that comes out of that is it's clear it has to be you have to be self-hosted. Yeah.
No, you probably have. Well, somebody's website needs to be able to run a script for you. This could be on any site.
Okay, so if you have a website, you don't have to be self-hosted. You can just have your own website and do it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. This would just be a blank file, with a PHP extension, and this code would be in it. And as long as your website could run PHP scripts, which almost all of them can, then this will be perfect.
Yeah, and then you refer to the API for Facebook or Twitter. Does that have to be your own API for your own Facebook account, or can it be, just a simple login page for Facebook so a user can post the results on their own page?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And so when you post it to Facebook and Twitter, you're going to be sending the ID and the password or the key or whatever method they use in their rules to identify whose account you want to post it to.
Okay, okay. Because I think that would be a good way to, publicize your app.
I think that would be awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And yes, it's technical, but this is probably one of those things where, in some cases, and I'm not trying to be, some smarty pants or whatever, but I could do this in 30 minutes, right? And so a developer who hears what you're saying, hey, I get a URL with some values in it, I need you to send them to Twitter, you might, for $20, you might go to Freelancer or Odesk or something, just have somebody do this for you.
Okay. Yeah, might be money well worth spent.
Right, exactly. So you don't have to do all this yourself.
Okay, David, thanks a lot for that.
You're welcome. And then Miguel has a follow-up question on Durval's question. How do you have sounds as questions on a quiz instead of text and images? And how to have images as answers? So there's a couple different questions in there. So on a quiz, you have an image file name, right? So you could use, for images, I'm going to answer that one first. You could have an image that says, I don't know, you could have a quiz called, name the animals, and the pictures are just animals, and then the answers are other animals. One of them is right. So you might have a picture of a duck, and then your answers are, your question text is nothing, it's blank, so you put in none. The picture shows up, and it's obviously a duck, a chicken, a pig, or a cow, right? If the user taps on it, then we're right. So that's how you would use images. So as far as audio, there's a couple different questions there. Do you want to play audio when they answer the question, or do you want to play audio? Do you want the question itself to be audio? So this says, how do you have sound?
Yeah, the question is. I mean the question itself. I saw already that that fellow Buzztouch user, this Russian guy. He did that in a beautiful app he did for children, where he had sounds for questions. He had animal sounds for questions.
Yep.
And then he had the image of the animal as an answer, not text as an answer as well.
Yeah, so I don't know exactly what he did because I didn't see his project, but I can tell you that basically he started with this quiz plugin and he changed it up quite a bit. The technical details around how he did that, I don't know, but I would guess that when the question loaded, I'm in the quiz plugin right now. If we go to, I don't know, one of these has got to be, set question image, for example. This sets the image for each question. He might have done something like, play question sound effect. So he probably had, or play sound file or something. So he probably had an array of question sounds, just like we did in our app delegate. Remember when we had all these sounds? He probably recorded all the sounds, put them in a list, and then loaded one with each image or something like that. I don't really know. So that would be how you played the sound when the question loaded. That'd be one way. Then another way to do it in terms of answering the questions, you probably just changed around the location of the buttons. And again, you could totally change this quiz screen around if you want. It's just going to be some hacking around. I don't know that there's an easy way to do it. Sounds to me like somebody needs to make a sound quiz plugin. That'd be an awesome one.
Yeah, yes, it would. Yeah, I got the picture. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
So, Warren?
Yes, sir.
I have a question that's not technical, you say, and I actually have a question for you guys that's not technical too, so you first.
Okay. Mine is really pretty simple. I haven't been on the forum for a few days, but I did see a post that you put up there maybe a few hours ago regarding looking for case studies. We want to promote you. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, you haven't been on the forum for a while. Didn't we kick you out? Are you not in our club anymore?
I had to change my name to get back on.
Oh, okay, got it. Okay, so case studies. So what we're thinking here is, got some good replies. We want to, Warren, you and I have had this conversation. Everybody in this meeting has had this conversation a few times with us. We're trying to gather, this is our first formal effort of saying, hey, we want to hear about you, why you're cool, why you're wonderful, and why you love Buzztouch and what you've made. That's kind of the easy way to say it. So you might know someone else, you might be uncomfortable nominating yourself for that kind of category, but don't be bashful. And we want some photos of you. You could also send us, a video or something like that. But the idea is we're going to begin changing the message on the site to better reflect who we all are, right? We're a bunch of people trying to make apps. And in order to do that successfully, I think it will help us by showing real people who are in real places who have made real things in different types of categories. And so, we'd like to think that if you were starting a business project or a client project or a personal project or a school project or whatever the reason you're making an app for, we'd like to think that you should use our tool to do that. And so we hope to highlight people who have done those things, who don't mind getting a little bit of attention. Make sense?
It does to me. I know you and I have had this conversation a bunch of times, and yeah, we need to get the message out there that these are real people and this is doable. And as long as you've got a vision for what you're trying to do, the tools are there and the resources are there, and
yeah, no, totally. I think it would be great. In fact, Warren, you've volunteered to do this a few times, and I'm not sure if you still have time or not, but I think it would be wonderful if somebody could just make a forum post that says, give me your 15-second video. 15 seconds or less. Tell us what you use the tool for. And I think if we got 10, 20, 30, 40 of those, it could be kind of fun. Turn your phone around, video yourself. Don't be embarrassed, and just, that would be a big help. I think that would be comforting for people who are arriving on the site.
Well, I completely agree with you. And David, you might go first.
What do you want me to do? I mean, the challenge with me and Warren, we've laughed and argued about this. I'm not the guy who found it, discovered it, and then did something with it. I'm the guy who made it. And so I can introduce myself as the guy who made it and why I made it. And I've tried to do that a bunch of times, and I get super anxious about what I'm saying. But totally, I agree. I'll send you a video in 15 seconds about why I made it. Maybe that should be the introduction. I don't know. Well, Susan's got her deal up too.
Yeah, Susan's got her hand up, and Derval and Sherry both chimed in that it was a great idea. So they're all on board with doing this.
Okay.
Wait, I think it's a great idea. I was going to say, I used to be a little bit involved in something called Game Maker, and what they did every year, and I don't know if they still do it, but they took the best video games that have been made with Game Maker, and they made it into like a 1-minute video that showed a whole bunch of video games, just a very, very short video, but it was just to show the different things they could kind of showcase what could be done with it. But it's a different idea. But if there was like a video that showed different Buzztouch apps that have been made in action, and just kind of really quickly jump from this app to this app to this app, just to show the different types of apps that were made.
That would be
That'd
cool.
be really cool. It's a different initiative, but it'd be really, really cool, YouTube thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely, kind of one thing at a time, whatever. But you're going to see in the coming days or weeks or whatever, you're going to see this homepage change, and you're going to see a move towards us trying to be a little less confusing and a little bit more transparent about who we've all become. 2 or 3 years ago, it was neat to just try to get the point across what we were doing, but today, this is a great place to hang out. If you want to make software and you want to make apps, you want to figure it all out, great, we're your gang. So we're going to start doing that. A-Train's gone. Hey, so here's my question. And a lot of you guys have had, and you can weigh in by sending an email, or maybe somebody should make a forum post about it. Here's my question. I want to entertain the idea of group apps. And what I mean by that is, say 10 of us. There's 10 of us in this meeting right now. If the 10 of us settled on an individual idea, it could be anything, and we made an app, a cool app, and we all kind of shared in the development of that app, I think that we could learn a lot about that process, make a little bit of money. I'm sure that I could get a lot of people to download the thing, and do something useful with that money, a scholarship, a big party, something like that. But I want to start to explore, is there something fun, interesting, useful about a group of people creating an app together, or is that dumb and a waste of time and just doesn't work? And I don't think we'll know that unless we actually tried it. And so the question I have for you guys is, can you entertain that idea, maybe have a conversation about it, with the goal of trying to figure out, do we want to do something like that? The biggest problems that I can think of are the idea itself. I don't know how it would not be like one person's idea. And I think it would be more meaningful if it was all of our ideas. Maybe it's a regional thing. I don't really know. So the idea is a little bit problematic. What are we going to make? And then secondly, how are we going to share the creation process? Like, do we have, meetings twice a week? I mean, how are we going to do that? But I want you guys to, my question for you guys is, can you think about that concept so that next time we get together, or a month from now when you hear me talking about it, you'll have given it some thought. So I think that would be cool. Okay, so Warren from MySPS, can plugins be uploaded to buzztouch.com from my account without submitting to the marketplace? I can't remember if it's possible. I have self-hosted, but curious about this option. You can. What you'll do is you'll go to the control panel. The question is can I make a plugin for my buzztouch.com hosted panel without putting them in the market? And yeah, what you'll do is you'll make a new blank plugin with the plugin creator tool. You'll then customize it, download it, customize it, and then resubmit it to us. And when you resubmit it to us, you'll put in the note or whatever, hey, this is for private use only, and we'll get it in your control panel. So yes, you can. It looks like we got about 5 more minutes. I think I lost everybody when I said let's make an app together, like some kind of, all together now kind of rah-rah dance. But I think that could be fun.
No, I don't think that you.
I put this in the text.
It's a good idea.
Go ahead.
But oh, I'm sorry. I put this in the text, but I would absolutely love to put something together as a team effort on how to become. I like what Susan just said about the videos, but why not make an app saying how to become a buzz toucher? I mean, there's so much already tutorials out there already. Why not just make an app for it?
Well, for 2 reasons. I think that makes sense, but one is you're not going to make any money doing that. And one of the goals is if we can sell this thing for $1.99 to 10 or 12,000 people or 50,000 people, then we can do something useful with that money.
So that's a great subject right there. What do you want the criteria to the app to be?
Yeah, I just want you guys to think about that exact question. I can just throw 10 app ideas out there easily on the screen, but that's not very much. That isn't necessarily what I'm thinking. It may be that that's exactly what we do. David has an idea. Let's all make it together, and we all get a little name in the credits and some credibility, and it's cool, right? There's nothing wrong with that. I just thought maybe it's a little short-sighted of me to just make the statement, this is what we're making, when maybe the rest of you have some good ideas.
Oh yeah, you got to start with a brainstorming session, and then
Right,
you got to
exactly.
filter. You got to filter through your ideas, do pros and cons, and then you have to come to a consensus on which idea to pursue. It's got to be a team effort.
Yeah, totally. So it looks like we're out of time today. Warren's reminding us that tomorrow's 90 minutes, another Q&A session like this.
Don't forget to vote,
everybody.
I did that for you, David.
You did what for me?
I said, don't forget to vote.
Don't forget to vote. If you could see me, I got my little sticker on. In fact,
Good for you.
I took pictures of the voting little booth to show my teenagers because they were wondering how difficult it was, and it's horribly complicated.
I didn't see your name on the ballot, though.
Yeah, and I'm not going to tell you who I voted for, but I'm there.
Well,
so thank you, everyone. Thank you, Warren. Do you want to close us up in the last minute?
Well, not much to add here other than we'll get the recording up as soon as possible. They seem to be very popular, these recordings up on the up on YouTube. And at some point in the future, when I've got some time, which I'm not sure when that's going to be, I'm going to try to chop these up into a little more bite-sized chunks, especially this Q&A session. You know, we could break this down into a bunch of small mini segments that were specific to questions.
Sure.
Tomorrow night, our normal Wednesday night meeting time, which is 9:00 p.m. Eastern, 8 Central, 7, 6, probably 3 in the morning in the UK. I'm not sure exactly. But again, 90 minutes, questions and answers, just like today, same format. And I hope everybody enjoyed it.
Thank you, Warren.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, David. Thank you, Warren.
Yep.
Thanks so much, Warren, for putting it together.
Hey, guys.
Absolutely. See you soon.
Thanks, David. Once again, wow.
Thanks.